bonjour à vous pour cette conférence.
Good morning and welcome to this press conference to report our 2021 business results. And for once you're in new premises, that is our auditorium, physically present.
First, to recall the current context, especially that of the war in Russia, in Ukraine, and this is taking over all the other topics for the moment. We are also affected by what the Ukrainians are going through, and we have activities in Russia, sales of Falcons, and of course they will be altered because we are carefully following the measures set up by France and the EU, as well as a certain number of other countries. We are also very much aware of the purchasing of certain material like titanium, and so therefore we are holding a crisis cell at the GIFAS and in other organizations, and we are directly connected with the French authorities at the highest level. And we will be able to talk about this a little later if you wish. So the health crisis seems to be slightly behind us. We don't need to wear masks anymore from, I think, the 14th of March onwards. And so this is already done, the easing of restrictions in other countries, and so we'll be able to breathe again normally. But in spite of all this, what I wanted to say is that in 2021, there was a strong economic recovery. If we compare with 2020, it was slightly contrasted. If we compare with 2019, and here I'm talking in general, but since there was a strong recovery, well supported by the French authorities, there were difficulties, shortages that were noticed everywhere. Difficulties in the supply chain after these 2 years of COVID, the supply chain is slightly affected. And with Ukraine, this creates a lot of inflation. And of course, this can be a cause for concern for us. And at the same time, we are pursuing, although this is come second because of Ukraine, the importance of the environmental issues and societal issues that we are following. And I will say a few words about that also. So the highlights of the year, you've seen it in the film, the success of the Rafale in exports. We're going to pursue this success. There is a ramp-up of the Falcon market. There was an order of 100 aircraft, 49 Rafale, 51 Falcons, and they do not integrate the two major contracts, which are the UAE for 80 and Indonesia, 42 Rafales. The deliveries in 2021, which will make up most of the sales, total sales, 30 Falcons. You remember our guidance was 25, and the 25 Rafale that will scrupulously follow our guidance. And in the field of development, you have the broadening of the Falcon family with the first maiden flight of the 6X and the unveiling of the 10X. A few words on the program, the COVID. Well, very quickly on the COVID, we have had the opportunity to talk about this. Just to recall that the supply chain was strongly affected, not only the French supply chain, but the global one, with all the issues regarding logistics, transport, the stopping, halting of chains, recovery of chains. And in manufacturing, we had to face all these different difficulties. If you have a screw of 5 that does not arrive, it stops the entire manufacturing line. So we had to be on the field, and we did this with the GIFAS, with the control towers that we set up, and at Dassault to carefully monitor all these supply chain issues. And this is still happening today. It did not stop overnight. Now, as for Rafale export, just to recall this strong success of the Rafale, the orders in Egypt and Greece in 2021, France, therefore, offset the 12 French aircraft that were sold off to Greece. 6 out of the 12, and the 6 other will go in 2023. So a French order of 12 aircraft. There was also the sales to Croatia from France, from state to state, 12 aircraft, and they will be offset later on with the fifth tranche. UAE 80 Rafale, we've talked about it. This is the contract of the century, at least of the 21st century, the greatest contract ever signed by Dassault. Indonesia, new country, which is important for us. So the Indo-Pacific area and the political authorities are strongly interested in that area because there's always a lot happening there. So a new customer for Dassault, Indonesia. And it's always very good to note this contract is not yet enforced, it is signed. Greece has approved in its parliament at the beginning of the year the acquisition of 6 additional Rafales that will be added to the 18. So 12 from the French Air Force and 9 more. This contract is not yet signed. It will be in the coming days. And the export prospections are ongoing. We have a few countries that we're looking at. So the 25 new Rafales delivered in 2021, and we've added the 6 Rafale from the French Air Force transformed in Istres, and they have already been sent to Greece. As for France, the 12 additional aircraft, so the order, we've worked on what we've called the Tranche 5, the 5th batch, which is a contract awarded in 2023 for deliveries in 2027. We also had to prepare this Tranche 5 with a certain number of definition of material for this future aircraft in this 5th batch. So this 5T productivity was signed in 2021 with France. The F4 standard is still being developed. You know that that is the standard that will be delivered to the French armies in the coming years, and it will be the basis for the definition for the UAE. As for military support, after the verticalized contracts that were signed for the Rafale, Ravel, and Ocean for Atlantic 2, the armies wanted to have the same type of contract with all the Mirage 2000, and not for 10 years, but for 14 years. And so, therefore, we will be able to increase the availabilities of aircraft. In the current context, this is extremely important because, as you know, our aircraft are put to contribution very strongly in the framework of this Ukrainian crisis at the borders with Ukraine and the allied countries. As for these FCAS, 2021 was very active. We pursued phase 1A that will be over in the coming days. We'll pursue our technical and operational studies between the 3 air forces and the industrial armies. You've seen the 3 chiefs of staff, French, German, and Spanish. They came and conversed with us on this technical and operational studies that must prefigure what will be the future air combat aircraft in the coming years. We pursued this 1A phase with the 1B phase, which prefigures a demonstrator which will be launched in the phase 2. It was a bit difficult with Airbus at the beginning of 2021, as you know. It was widely commented. We received agreements. We negotiated a contract with the DGA, which is ready, and we're waiting for Airbus to sign the contract with us, which is not yet the case right now. As for the Eurodrone, well, here our situation is slightly different. This is the Airbus in Germany, which is the leader. Dassault with Leonardo. These are 2 major partners, but subcontractors for Airbus. And we have met the demands of Airbus and signed the contract with Locar. The contract between Airbus and Dassault has been signed. So this project is beginning, and is going to begin, in the coming days. As for the multi-mission Falcons, we are continuing maritime surveillance aircraft program. We've delivered our 6th Falcon maritime surveillance to the Japanese, which is the last of the 6 order, and we have a few prospections. For the maritime patrol, the modernization, the retrofit of the ATL-2 is being pursued with the 4th aircraft out of the 7, and the 5th aircraft, which is in its final stage. The Falcon context So the market is going up. During the COVID crisis, we saw the strong drop in the sales of new aircraft, but we had hopes because the sales of pre-owned aircraft had remained at a good level because there was a stopping of commercial aviation. Those who wanted to keep traveling, especially domestically in the US, needed aircraft, so this market remained quite buoyant. From 2021, early 2021, therefore, the buyers came back to us, and the projects that had been put off were back on our pile and started selling again. The market is very active. We are benefiting from the arrival of these two new aircraft, which are the 6X, and we're doing our best to fulfill all our orders by the end of the year. We still have supply chain problems, and the 10X, which will arrive at the end of 2025. And this really boosted the relations we could have with our potential buyers. And of course, there's a problem regarding sales with Russia because all these sales are going to stop, potential sales, and the sales already done will be frozen. As for the 6X, everything is running smoothly, 167 flights, 523 flown hours at the end of 2021, an excellent flight behavior of the aircraft during flight, during its tests in flight and certification tests, because you know that certification is underway. The performance is perfectly online with what was expected, and so therefore for us, this is very positive. This program is very positive, and we will reach at the end of the year. And as for the SAF and the 6X and the whole range, the difficulty is that we can obtain some for a few flights, but then afterwards it's not easy to have them all around the world. Aircraft number 4 and 5 are under completion. You've seen the arrival of an aircraft at Little Rock in the film Transatlantic. The program took place properly, and we are going around the world with the 6X, and this will take place in the first half of this year so that we can check this aircraft operationally, and we'll be able to show it throughout all the stops we'll be making. The 10X, the global launch, I'll not go back on this. We've talked a lot about this. The range is 7,500 nautical miles, 2 Rolls-Royce engines, and new generation cockpit, so a very spacey cabin, and we can be operational, we can keep working, we can sleep on these flights, which are very long flights. As for the eco-responsibility, we are working on the technologies that will allow us to pursue the improvements to reduce our carbon footprint for our future aircraft. So we are participating in a certain number of programs. The CORAC program in France with our partners from GIFAS. It is the state that is partly funding some of these developments. We're working a lot on the material, on the system architecture, on the reduction of the footprint by optimizing the flight plans. And we're also working with Europe, with Clean Sky, with a certain number of programs, and CESAR for the optimization of air traffic. And that is to prepare the future generations of aircraft. So this is the range, the 2000 until the 10X, which is very exhaustive, and this is very good for the future sales of Falcons. Our customer support, we've always improved our customer support. So once again, we've won this battle. AIN is an American media that recognizes the Falcons as being well supported in the world according to the customers. We've even improved our general ratings because it's rated on all kinds of topics, and we're often the first. And in the general classification, we are generally the first, and there's even an improvement of our rating since last year. So we're going to pursue these efforts. We could use our stations, service stations, They had stopped during the 2 years of COVID, but now they are resuming with the stronger number of flights since 2021. The transformation plan, you've seen a few elements. We've kept you informed, the entire infrastructure to prepare for the future, and the work on the processes based on the new digital tools from Dassault System, but not only because we are generalizing SAP on a certain number of points. The real ambition for us is to properly master our data and to protect them. And that is the key of this transformation. Social and environmental responsibility. I'm not going to read this. You can read it yourselves, but we're working very hard in a certain number of areas. In any case, the constraints coming from Europe, Fit for 55, and all the taxonomy issues, the new laws, climate and resilience, this forces us to improve and strengthen all the processes that allow us to fully meet all these requirements that are arriving. And there are a lot of requirements. It's a lot of work, and it's going to cost us quite a lot. As for eco-responsibility, we're trying to consume less. So I think this is the first time we're presenting this to you. This is the evolution from 2021 and 2019. The COVID showed that we needed to have more pulsed aeration, so we used more gas. But as for the rest, we are going towards a reduction in a certain number of consumptions, in line with what we want to do in-house to support this energy transition. I'd like to remind you that the REACH standard, which is a very demanding standard, forces us to change a certain number of processes, and changing these processes does not mean change our standards in purchasing, but this means our ability to recertify this material, to recertify the whole chain so that we can check that we have the same performance with the new material compared to the previous one. So this is important efforts that are being carried out for years now to comply with this standard. Now, as for the results, I'll be very quick so that we can have time for the questions. So the number of orders, 2021, 51 Falcons, 49 Rafales. Out of the 49, 37 Rafales for export, 12 for France, compared to the 15 Falcon in 2020. So this is not a book-to-bill above one. It is much above one, considering the total sales, but it is a real strong recovery in the number of orders, which hadn't happened in 2020 for the reason you know of, which is COVID. As for the deliveries, 30 Falcons compared to the 34. We have the COVID effect. We ordered less, so we delivered less. As for the Rafales, the export contracts, 0 deliveries in France. In 2021, I'd like to underline this is not to promote exports. That's because the French plan, the French military programming law, has asked to defer the delivery of French aircraft for 4 to 5 years. And so you'll see it in the total sales. This will increase total sales considering the 13 Rafale delivered in 2021. So the backlog is fleshed out with 86 aircraft, 46 Rafale, and 40 Falcons. Now, the figures as such, order intake is 12.1 billion for 2021, with the breakdown that you can see here on this chart, 6.2 billion for defense export, 3 billion for defense France, and 2.9 billion for the Falcons. As for the net sales, the deliveries, 7.2 billion. The breakdown is 4.5 billion for Rafale export, 2 billion for Falcon, and 0.7 billion for France. The backlog, consolidated backlog, 20.8 billion. It stands at 20.8 billion. It's broken down with 9.9 billion for Rafale export. I'd like to specify that in this backlog, you don't have the UAE for 80 aircraft, nor Indonesia, nor the 6 additional aircraft for Greece that we should be signing. So we're going to leave that for 2022. We always need to keep some for later on. For France, we have 7.8 billion and 3.1 billion, because in the 7.8, these are all the French aircraft that we have retained the orders, the fourth tranche 2 plus the 12, that is 40 aircraft in our backlog for France that we need to deliver in the future, and the Falcon 3.1 billion with a greater flow for the Falcons. As for the self-financed R&D, we are still spending heavily in self-financed R&D. We have 2 Falcons in development, the end of the 6X, which is in development, and the beginning of its operational life for the end of 2022, and the ramping up of the development of the 10X. So we're going to remain at that level until we get these 2 aircraft, which is quite a significant effort for the company. The results of Thales, you saw them yesterday. The results of Thales are good. A net margin of 8.4%, an operating margin above 10%. This is drawn by defense and mainly drawn by the Rafale orders in the framework of our defense program. The income statement, the operational income over total sales, 7,233,000,000. Operating result, 427 million, 3%. So the financial income, 26 million euros. Thales has given its contribution to our contribution, 341 million euros. And after taxes, net result, 693 million, which is a net margin of 9.6%. And the result of R&D, which is at 7.6% self-finance, which is slightly lower than last year because the total sales is higher. So the earnings per share is 8.3 euros compared to the result last year, 4.8. So a very good year for 2021. The available cash, well, the available cash is increasing 4.9 billion, which is a very positive point. Dividends for this year, we've proposed after the shareholder meeting, and we will be presenting this at our meeting, a dividend per share at 2.49 euros, and there will be a share price for the employees of 139 million for profit sharing. And if we were at the minimum legal, we would have 28 million of dividends. Dassault is by far the one distributing the most in terms of profit sharing and incentives. Outlooks and strategies, 2022 will be very full. Execute the Rafale contracts, execute the 3 contracts, UAE, Indonesia, and Greece. Pursue our developments, the F4, more particularly, prepare the standards of the future post F4, because the Rafale is going to last a certain number of years. The Falcon seize all the opportunities of this market recovery to sell as many as possible, to commission the 6X, pursue with the 10X, keeping our design office busy, pursue our support, military support, and our French forces, considering our context. The Falcon also to maintain this nice image that Dassault has in the field of support and ensure the availability of our aircraft, support energy transition by continuing to contribute to R&T and look at our expenditure in this area. The Make in India, which is part of our strategy, which is quite substantial. Quite a number of Falcon 2000 parts are coming out of our plant in Nagpur. The NGF, we're still waiting for the setting up of the second part of phase 1B of this demonstrator and the launching of the Eurodrone. We have a guidance for 2022 of 13 Rafale and 35 Falcon. with, as I was saying earlier on, a strong tension in our supply chain. And so the net sales will be going down, will be decreasing, because we'll deliver only 13 Rafale. And although our backlog is well furnished, it will all depend on the deliveries planned in the contract. So 13 is under 25, so the sales will be slightly lower. This is what I wanted to tell you this morning, and now I'm ready to answer your questions. We have 45 minutes for that.